Hello everyone, time for a little bit of a wargaming update. Haven't been terribly productive of late, been busy with quite a few things, but haven't managed to get a lot of painting done. I have finished a couple more bits and pieces though for the 15mm Western Pony Wars, call it what you will, project. This being one of them. This is a Stagecoach from Freycor's Yellow Ribbon range. Nice little model. Quite a lot to it. There's actually 4 passengers inside the carriage, which you hardly see at all. But I did take the trouble to paint them, and then I had to take some photographs of them, before I glued them into the carriage, just to show that I had actually, made an effort on them. I suppose you could always leave the roof, open, as it were, so that you could see them, but there's not really a lot of point, because they're seated figures. You're never going to be able to take them out and move them around on the tabletop or anything, so all you see of them now is what you can make out through the windows of the Stagecoach. The horses are not the ones that come with the set. I took those and I've used those for another purpose, which I'll show you in a moment. But these are also horses. They're just galloping Stagecoach horses rather than the sort of standing, straight walking ones that come with this little kind of unit, as it were. But they are intended to be used with the Stagecoach, so I'm not quite sure why they do that. Why they don't, offer you either Stagecoach with galloping horses or standing horses, because if you want the coach to be with galloping horses, you've got to buy the standing ones as well. But anyway, I found a use for them, as I say, so quite happy with this model. The use I found for them, the standing horses that is you may remember some time ago I did a 3D print of a Western Stagecoach, and here it is. So rather than have the figures, take the figures and everything and not use the model of the Stagecoach, I thought I might as well end up with 2 Stagecoaches, and because it's empty, I could just have it with the sort of horses that are in a more kind of less dynamic kind of pose. Could be parked in outside the hotel or something in a western town, just standing empty. So it makes a nice little scenic kind of piece. And then finally, I managed to paint up a pack train, which is also Freycor, and it will do fine for the sort of cavalry pack mules in scenario. It's the kind of thing that Pony Wars require, so it'll come in useful for that. But in terms of Wargames rules, I mean, I'm looking more and more to kind of reverting to my original plan of using black powder for them. Western, the Peter Pig rules, as you know, I sort of fell out of love with quite rapidly. Pony Wars looks an interesting set of rules, but they're very dated, and it's more a kind of participation type entertainment game that you'd put on a show or something like that, rather than a war game that you could play sort of regularly at a club or something like that. I'm not knocking it, it's just it'll take a little while to get everything together to play a game of Pony Wars anyway, and I'm probably more inclined now to revert to thinking about recreating that scenario in the second edition of Black Powder, and bringing other elements like these stagecoaches into it as well. But anyway, that's the way I'm thinking. And the reason I've been a little bit unproductive on the painting side is that whereas I was kind of concentrating almost entirely on these 15mm Western figures, I've now gone back to my previous habit of having sort of, a few things on the tabletop at the same time and just rotating around them. So I'm painting other things as well at the moment, but it means that it takes longer for me to complete any one thing to show you. But that's the painting I've got done. In terms of other wargaming things, I'll show you a few things that I've purchased and give you a little bit of a history chat again in a moment. But the only other kind of bit of news is I decided I probably will go to Salute. I was a little bit worried by sort of, COVID kind of regulations requiring me maybe to wear a mask all day. I didn't really, I fully approve of taking precautions. It's not that I'm a COVID denier or anything like that. I just didn't feel I would be comfortable, if I had to wear a mask all day. But I've been making inquiries, and the warlords, South London warlords, are still very. I emailed them, and they sort of emailed back straight away, saying they were reliant on the Excel, the convention centre's requirements, but they're not really very forthcoming about what you might be expected to do on the day. And I think by now they should be really, because when you go to Excel's website, and I've also contacted Excel directly and got the information I needed back from them. It's very plain what you'll have to do on the day, and I think really the South London warlords are a bit remiss in not telling their customers that when they sell them the tickets. But anyway, you won't be required to wear a mask all day. It is strongly advised that you wear a mask, but they leave it down to the individual. But what you will need to do, absolutely strict obligation, is in order to gain entry to the convention centre, you will require proof of either having been double jabbed, double vaccinated, or of a recent negative lateral flow test, or proof of coronavirus antibodies. So I'm not sure really what people what their common kind of practice is now, but certainly I'm living in the sort of sticks, as it were. I'm not accustomed to carrying that kind of documentation around with me. So I think it's quite possible that a lot of people are going to go to London on the day, to attend Salute and not be aware that that's required of them. I'm perfectly happy to produce it, but I really think that the South London warlords by now should be making it clear to people that they will need to present that kind of evidence in order to gain entry to the show. So if you weren't expecting that, and you are going to Salute, just be warned that you'll need to require some kind of proof of vaccination or a negative test, or that you've had COVID and you've got antibodies to it. Anyway, that's a little bit of a rant in a way, but I am intending to go to Salute, more for kind of personal reasons, that I want to be in London at some time before the end of the year. So it makes sense to kind of coincide it with a visit to Salute. Right, anyway, now on to some acquisitions I've made recently, I think. Right, I've got a couple of Osprey books. It's never occurred to me, I don't know why, not to to buy some of these for the Plains War, possibly because I didn't realise there were so many of them. Osprey did quite a few on the subject of US cavalry and Native American Indians and so on. I thought it was quite a limited topic, unlike something like the Napoleonic Wars or something like that, where there's lots of uniform variation and so on. But there's actually quite a lot to choose. So I got a couple. I got this one, which is Sioux Warrior versus US Cavalryman, and I also got Warriors at the Little Bighorn, 1876. Now, this one is more just a little bit of kind of eye candy, really, and just to sort of whet your appetite and so on. There's a few illustrations of actual figures. There we go, to give you a bit of painting inspiration. But a US cavalryman's a US cavalryman, and you're not going to really learn anything from this book. It's more, as I say, it's more just a little bit of inspiration to whet your appetite. This one, though, I really like, because it's actually not generic warriors, though. It's illustrations of how lots of named characters might have appeared at the Little Bighorn. So you can actually kind of personalize your figures and make them look like these, so you can identify characters on the tabletop. I mean, very often you do get the odd figure that is actually supposed to represent one of these people. So yeah, I was quite pleased with this, quite impressed by this, and we'll certainly use this as inspiration for painting certain figures. I mean, for instance, there's Ghoul there. He comes with I think it's Crazy Horse Ghoul and Lame White Man that you get with Blue Moon figures in a sort of command pack, as it were. But yeah, very pleased with that. So they're going to go in my collection. Now, next, I'll just give you a little bit more of a sort of chat on the sort of history side of the Little Bighorn. Okay, so I'm still working my way through this book. I read almost as slowly as I paint. This is the Custer Myth by W.A. Graham that I introduced you to on a previous video. Really loving this. It's the second time I've read it, and enjoying it just as much as I did the first time. But I just wanted to show you the kind of approach this book has, really, and give you a little bit, a couple of examples of the nuggets of information there are in here. So I previously spoke about how in this book there's the correspondence between this gentleman here, Theodore W Golden, and Benteen, in which Benteen revealed, not in confidence, but he revealed in this correspondence to Golden his attitude to Custer, his previous attitude prior to the Battle of the Little Bighorn, and the contempt that he held Custer in, really, and the animosity there was between them. And that's clearly would have been pertinent to analysis of the Little Bighorn, and why, a possible reason why Custer may have not received the assistance from Reno and Benteen that he might have expected, for instance. Now, it turns out, and Graham, the author of this book, presents quite clear evidence that Golden was, in fact, a little bit of an imposter, and that Benteen had been taken in by him. Now, that doesn't detract from the credibility of Benteen's remarks to Golden about his attitude to Custer. But it does throw another spanner in the works in terms of the so-called evidence that Golden, who was present at the Little Bighorn and fought, in the action up on the bluffs with Reno, it does throw a cloud over the evidence that Golden produces, because at the time of the battle, Golden was in the 7th Cavalry, and he did come under fire at the battle, but he didn't play the role that he makes out. If I can read you this first paragraph here, it'll give you an idea of the problem. It reads, "A figure which bobs up in some connection with almost every important phase of the Battle of the Little Bighorn is that of Theodore W Golden, a private of G Company. According to his various and varied tales, he was Custer's orderly on the day of the battle. He carried a written order to Reno after the latter had crossed the river. He was unhorsed during the retreat to the bluffs, hid with Herondine in the timber, and joined the command on the heights in time to hear the distant firing downriver. He witnessed the deaths of both McIntosh and Hodgson. He overheard a heated colloquy between Weir and Reno on the hill. He was one of the heroes who, under Indian fire, risked their lives to bring water to the wounded, for which he received the Congressional Medal of Honor. After the battle, he rode over the field with Martin, the trumpeter, who pointed out to him the place where he turned back with Custer's last message to Benteen to come on and be quick. In short, he was present at or participated in almost everything that happened at the Little Bighorn, except, of course, the unpleasant experience of being killed with Custer." Now, what Graham is saying is basically, if all that were true, then Golding is an absolutely key witness of a lot of the events of the day, and his evidence casts light on a lot of Custer's reasoning and thinking on the day, and why the disaster actually took place. But Graham wrote this book in the early 1950s. It was long after lots of people who were party to the battle had actually passed away, including Golden himself. He's able to in this book, he's able to open up a lot more on why he didn't take Golding's account of the battle seriously, and why he had left Golding's account out of his own description of the battle that he wrote in 1923 in an article in the Cavalry Journal, which is still considered one of the most sort of impartial and accurate kind of descriptions of what probably happened on the day. But Golden himself was actually, and a lot of Custer's supporters were actually quite upset with Graham that he didn't include Golding's evidence. And in this chapter, Mr. Golden Discredited himself, it's titled, Graham goes into the reasons why he doesn't believe Golding's evidence and why he left it out of his own article. Now, the main reason is that Golden claimed to have joined the 7th Cavalry in 1873, and this was why he was able to kind of inveigle his way into Benteen's confidence, because Benteen, as far as Benteen was aware, they'd served together on various campaigns and so on, and Benteen was corresponding with a seasoned veteran of the 7th Cavalry. In fact, Graham is able to prove, and he's able to do this because he is Army himself, and he had access to records and documents that outsiders wouldn't have. But he got hold of Golding's service record and is able to prove that Golding only joined the 7th Cavalry a couple of months before the Battle of the Little Bighorn. He was very unseasoned and inexperienced, and more importantly, he'd actually lied about his age, and he was very young. And shortly after the battle, the army received a submission from Golding's parents proving that he had lied about his age and requiring, that the army dismissed him basically and returned him home, which the army duly did. So, in other words, Golden had completely sort of lied about his seniority and so on the day, and then there is absolutely no way, as Graham points out, that Custer would have made him an orderly. That was a duty assigned to far more, usually to sergeants or trumpeters or something like that, people with a lot more experience and seasoned warriors, as it were. And that is of huge importance to this whole debate between the pro and anti-Custer partisans, because if Golden had taken a message from Custer to Reno, then it's proof really that Custer had a plan. He hadn't just split his command and then allowed them to. He was trying to coordinate all the various elements of his of the 7th Cavalry, rather than just abandoning Reno and going off on this sort of off under his own steam to try and find another ford across the Little Bighorn and attack the other end of the village. And the supporters of Custer have jumped on this message that Golden is supposed to have sent, and the instructions he gave to Golden to remain with Reno and then rejoin Custer once the two elements had met at the other end of the village. And in fact, it's complete. Reno had absolutely no recollection of having received such a message, because he hadn't. And the fact that Golden claimed that he had brought that message to him was really important to people who wanted to prove that Custer hadn't been behaving in a kind of careless manner on the day. And more than that is the fact that Golden definitely did receive the Congressional Medal of Honor for bringing water up from the Little Bighorn, or up from a creek that led into the Little Bighorn, onto the bluffs where Reno's command, where the wounded were, and doing so under fire. There's no doubt that he got the Congressional Medal of Honor, but Graham points out that there were 18 others who all received decorations for doing exactly the same thing. All those 18 others received their decorations in 1878, 2 years after the battle. Golden actually waited 20 years. He didn't receive his Congressional Medal of Honor until 1896. And Graham kind of just doesn't say, he made up that story as well. He just points out that there's a huge gap between Golden's decoration and all the others, and then just points out as well that in 1896 Golden was very kind of highly placed politically, because he was a practicing lawyer in Wisconsin, and also was chairman of the Republican Party, the Republican State Central Committee for Wisconsin. So very highly placed politically, and by this time his accounts of his role on the day of the battle were given credit, and the fact that he'd been dismissed from the army without honour, as the saying goes, in 1876 is just not mentioned at all. It's not known. It's not public knowledge. So, as the years went by, Golden embellished his story more and more, to the detriment of getting to the bottom of the facts of what actually happened on the day, but also to his own enhancement of his own political career and profile. So that's the sort of thing that you don't come across in a lot of other histories of the Little Bighorn. It's all this sort of evidence that Graham presents to you and then gives you the kind of pros and cons of whether it might or might not be actually credible eyewitness accounts. I mean, another one is an affidavit that was produced, I think, in the 1920s, but had actually been supposedly made in 1878, and that came from Custer's maid, a lady called Mary Adams, who in 1878 supposedly submitted this affidavit in front of a lawyer. I'll read it out to you. Territory of Dakota, County of Burleigh. Personally came before me Mary Adams, who being first duly sworn, deposes and says that she resides in the city of Bismarck, Dakota Territory, and has resided in said city for 3 months just past, that she came to Dakota Territory with General George A. Custer in the spring of 1873, that she was in the ploy of General George A. Custer continuously from 1873 up to the time of his death in June 1876, that while in his employ she accompanied him on his military expeditions in the capacity of cook, that she left Fort Abraham Lincoln in the spring of 1876 with General Terry's expedition in the employ of the said General Custer, and was present in the said General Custer's tent on the Rosebud River in Montana Territory when General Terry came into said tent, and the said Terry said to General Custer, "Custer, I don't know what to say for the last." Custer replied, "Say whatever you want to say." Terry then said, "Use your own judgment and do what you think best if you strike the trail, and whatever you do, Custer, hold on to your wounded, and further saith not. Her Mary Adams Mark." So that was purportedly subscribed and sworn to before the notary, George P. Flannery, on the 16th of January 1878. The document, however, didn't come to light, and it was in the possession of Libby Custer, Custer's widow, supposedly. Didn't come to light until the 1920s, after General Terry had died. So apart from Mary Adams, Terry was dead, Custer was obviously dead, but it was proof, if you want, for the Custer supporters that Terry had given Custer more of a free hand to pursue the trail and to take his own judgments on the day to prevent the Indians from escaping. So in other words, it's very convenient for the people who wanted to prove that Terry had given Custer this sort of free hand to operate under his own initiative, because it had always been suggested that Custer had disobeyed Terry's orders to delay pursuing the trail and to time his actions to coincide with the arrival of Crook and Terry on the Little Bighorn at the same time. And in fact, as with the Golden thing, Graham is able to prove quite conclusively that this affidavit is actually fraudulent. He wrote to the notary, George Flannery, and Flannery had no memory of such an affidavit being sworn in front of him, and conclusively he was actually able to get an account of from the officer, I forget his name, it's in here somewhere, Lieutenant C.L. Gurley of the 6th Infantry. I would read this out to you as well. Lieutenant C.L. Gurley of the 6th Infantry, who was stationed at Fort Lincoln, has told how the news was broken to Mrs. Custer. This is the news of the calamity of the Little Bighorn and the other officers' wives. Gurley said, "The news came to me about 2 a.m. The commanding officers, Captain William S. McCaskey, 20th Infantry, summoned all the officers to his quarters at once, and there read to them the communication he had just received Perth steamer Far West from Captain Edward W Smith, General Terry's Adjutant General. After we had recovered from the shock, General McCaskey requested us to assist him in breaking the news to the widows. It fell to my lot to accompany Captain McCaskey and Dr. J.V.D. Middleton, our post-surgeon, to the quarters of Mrs. Custon. We started on our sad errand a little before 7 o'clock on the 6th of July morning. I went to the rear of the Custer house, woke up Maria, Mrs. Custer's housemaid, and requested her to rap on Mrs. Custer's door and say to her that she and Mrs. Calhoun and Miss Reed were wanted in the parlour. There we were almost immediately followed by the ladies of the Custer household, and there we told them their first intimation of the awful result of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. So in other words, Maria is the same maid who supposedly, maybe she did make out the affidavit, maybe she didn't, but either way, she certainly wasn't present. It was a falsehood. She certainly wasn't present with Custer's expedition or Terry's expedition in that tent, because she was left at home with Mrs. Custer attending her household, so she couldn't have been in two places at once. So that's another example. That's a more deliberate attempt to fraudulently present evidence which could sway the argument one way or the other. In Golden's case, it was simply a case of someone trying to get sort of personal aggrandizement out of exaggerating his role on the day. But in this case, it's a very deliberate attempt to produce false evidence. And it's just sort of a indication really of how the desperate straits that the people went to really sway the argument one way or another, and how bitter and acrimonious this whole debate has been ever since 1876 and continues to be even to this day. Anyway, that's enough waffle. End of my update for early October, and hope to see you on another video. Bye for now.